Yo, what's goody, fam? Toxic relationships drain your energy and your self worth. Whether it be a family member, a friend, a relationship, it has a tendency to, erode your self esteem and your emotional well being over time, right? And you might be sitting here like, it's one of those buzzwords, right? Being toxic. I actually think it's a bit overused, but in some instances is relevant. And I think that, you know, relationships that are toxic tend to involve manipulation. They involve, guilt tripping. They involve a lack of mutual respect, a lack of support, right? So if you're trying to figure out if a relationship is toxic, these are things that you want to pay attention to. Are people gaslighting you? Are they, again, manipulating you, coercing you? Are they trying to make you feel guilty, shameful, for whatever their benefit or reason is? And I have experience with, toxic relationships of all sorts. And I think it's one of those things that, you know, you can beat yourself up. Well, let me back up. I feel like toxic relationships are one of those things that unless you have experience with them, you don't know that you're in them until it's too late, right? And you find yourself dealing with things and feeling strange about it. Like, is this normal? Or like, why is this happening? Something feels off about this. And then you get educated and you learn about, the nature of a healthy relationship versus the nature of the relationship that you're in. And then you start to become aware of some of the signs. I've been in numerous instances where maybe at first didn't understand what was going on, and I eventually came around to realizing that I was being, coerced or manipulated or played, in some way, or just being made to feel a way that I didn't want to feel. And so, again, a lot of times it catches people off guard. You may feel blindsided by it. And then when you realize that it happened to you and you didn't see the signs, it's very easy for you to beat yourself up about it. But in hindsight, when you get some distance from it, you realize that it was, you realize it's a teachable moment. It's something that you can grow from, something that you can learn from. I would say for me, in my personal experience, going through a divorce was probably my greatest experience with being in a toxic, relationship or a toxic environment. That's about as intimate and as close as a relationship gets. And there was a bunch of things that I learned, but before I was able to learn, being in a toxic relationship really took a toll on my emotional well-being and my mental health. Going through the divorce and like going through all of that, I learned about things, right? I quite frankly never knew what gaslighting was. I think I'm a relatively smart, intelligent guy, but I never knew what it was. I didn't know, what I'm saying, what to look for. You might think somebody being slick or, I'm from New York. Like, yeah, you bugging. Or, it's really easy for you to just use language or say things or have somebody say something to you and not realize what's happening. And then later you thinking like, yo, I'm bugging. Like, what's going on? So yeah, learned about what gaslighting was. Also, was my first time ever experiencing depression. Never had any sort of experience with that. Also, you know, it was the first time that I identified, like just educating myself. I learned about anxiety and hypervigilance, right? These, growing up where I grew up, how I grew up, you just called it like being on point. You know what I'm saying? Keeping your antennas up. But really it's a form of anxiety, really it's hypervigilance. And being in a toxic relationship, being in a toxic environment exacerbated these things. You know what I'm saying? It forced me, in a very painful way, and bumping my head against the wall, forced me to become aware of these things and learn about them. And so, yeah, we talking about cutting off toxic relationships. I think, you know, once you become aware of what actually is toxic, you have to be able to pick up on the signs. You got to be able to read the room. You got to be able to understand what's going on. And, a lot of that, it's crazy because it can be very loud and obvious. You know what I'm saying? Like physical abuse, name calling, or it could be very subtle, like just negative comments. It could be emotional abuse. Or quite frankly, if you feel like you're constantly drained after your interactions with somebody, 9 times out of 10, it's not healthy for you. Like there's something about it that's just not right. And maybe you're not able to identify what that is, right? Whether, you might not be emotionally literate enough to name what you're feeling, or you might not be expert enough to understand what's happening to you. Again, in my case, I didn't know I was being gaslit in some instances. I think the point I want to make, or the thing I want to underscore, is to trust your intuition. Be, you know, be in tune with, be in tune with your body, be in tune with your spirit, and pay attention to how you're feeling. Make mental notes. Your body is gonna keep score for sure, but you have to be aware enough to pinpoint, when something is off, and do the work to key in and identify on what exactly that is and why you're feeling that way. There's a lot of, psychological barriers. There's a lot of, variables that stop people from leaving, toxic relationships. Again, and I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, but I'm talking about, you might have a toxic parent. You might have a friend, you know what I'm saying? You might have a sibling, a cousin, a grandparent, whatever it is. You might have somebody around you who makes you feel bad, who you don't feel well with, you don't feel safe around. If this is you, this is what I'm talking about. It isn't relegated to romantic relationships. There's friendships that are toxic, but because it's familiar, because it's just always been, you tend to just keep it around. But some of the barriers to removing yourself from the situation, might include, fear, guilt, shame, limiting beliefs around, if things will ever really change, or can they change and be different, or, just the uncertainty and the fear of the unknown. Like, and that's the thing, because when you're in a toxic environment with toxic people, you don't necessarily, like, these are people who can be very, very intentional and deliberate about what they're doing. And in some instances, they don't even realize what they're doing. And that's the scary part. Because you may have a person who's well intentioned and that person is still being toxic. It's spooky. You know what I'm saying? You have parents who, mean well. They want the best for you, but they want you to do what they want you to do. And to get you to do that, they guilt you, they shame you into doing it, right? They give you some woe is me story or something like that. And that doesn't make anybody feel good, right? One of the things that I want to point out that I've learned through my journey, there's a difference between influence and manipulation, right? Influence is when somebody gets you to do something that's in your best interest. They get you to do something that's good for you. They get you to do something that's helpful for you. Manipulation is when somebody gets you to do something for their best interest. They get you to do something that's harmful, that isn't good for you. If you pay close enough attention, you'll be able to identify if it's influence or if it's manipulation. And again, this is completely separate from intent. Sometimes people are manipulative and they don't intend to be. Sometimes people are manipulative and they know damn well that they're being manipulative. Excuse me. In either case, remove yourself from these people, right? I think in the process, in understanding, that you have to cut people off. And I say cut people off, but to be fair, my cutoff game is elite. But as I grow and mature and I look at life through the lens of my higher self, I think about, a tree. Trees don't have to cut off leaves. The tree grows and the leaves naturally fall off. And then new leaves grow. Right? Trees don't cut the leaves off. The tree is being a tree. The tree does what it does. It grows, it matures, it goes through its cycle, and the leaves fall right off. They change color, they fall. There's a season where the tree is barren, and then eventually they bud and there's new growth. And so if you're constantly growing and evolving, then you don't need to trim the leaves. You don't need to cut anything off. And I think the same thing about life. As long as you're growing, as long as you're learning, as long as you're evolving, you don't have to cut anybody off, because naturally you won't align and the energy won't be there, and people will stop finding themselves around you, and you'll stop allowing people to be around you. I think that's just, the nature of things. But in any case, when talking about cutting people off or letting relationships go, I think it's really important to understand the power of letting go and focusing your energy on reclaiming your power and keeping yourself grounded. My bro, Jeremy Anderson, said something one time. He said, you have to release in order to receive, right? You got to release what you have in order to receive something, new. My bro Toby said, it's hard to get your gifts from God when both your hands is full. Think about that. If you got your hands, if you got a whole bunch of things in your hands, it's hard for somebody to put something new and good in there. And the same thing is if you have a bunch of toxic relationships, you got a bunch of, you know, energy vampires around you, you giving your energy away to things that don't return, they don't have a positive ROI, you're going to constantly be depleted. It's going to be hard for you to regain your power. It's going to be hard for you to invest in things that, you know, help you grow and evolve. That energy is contagious, and you really got to protect your peace. And so, I think it's imperative that you remove people out of your space that don't belong there, that don't feel like they fit, because it just gives you, a sense of peace, a sense of, mental clarity, a sense of emotional freedom. And that freedom, that peace, that clarity is priceless. I can't tell you, how much I've grown through, my process. I could speak to my whole life, but even just the time in which I went through my divorce to like present day, that has been the greatest catalyst of growth for me, I would say, in my entire life. And I say that fully acknowledging that while it was the most enlightening experience of my life, it was easily the most excruciating at the same time for a bunch of reasons. And maybe I'll make a video about it. I don't know. Somebody asked me about, what my healing journey was like, what my healing journey was like around my divorce. And so I might make a video about that at another time. If that's something that you would be interested in, drop it in the comments. Let me know. But yeah, there's transformational power in removing toxic energy, removing toxic relationships from your life. Clarity, mental clarity, freedom, just peace. I want to double click on peace, man. Like peace, excuse me. Peace is priceless. If this is something that you are struggling with, if you know, right, and if you know that you are in a toxic relationship, again, whether it be a romantic partner, whether it be a business partner, whether it be a friendship, or if it's a family member, I want to encourage you to prioritize. I want you to prioritize your well-being. I want you to choose yourself early, often, and continuously. I want you to choose yourself even when it isn't convenient, even when it don't feel good. I want you to honor yourself. I want you to not abandon yourself. I want you to, while you're trying to figure out how to navigate that, I want you to surround yourself with people, right? Put yourself in an environment. Again, when I say environment, people, places, things. Put yourself in an environment that uplifts you, that supports you, that rejuvenates you, that charges you, that pours into you. I want you to, look at some tangible ways for you to create psychological safety for yourself, physical safety for yourself, right? I want you to look at healthy ways to cope and healthy ways to navigate the situation. One of which is just setting boundaries. And boundaries can be a very tricky thing because most people think that they need somebody's permission for a boundary, right? Somebody says, well, I need you to stop speaking to me like this, or I need you to treat me with respect. Boundaries don't work that way. Boundaries are not a request of a person. Boundaries is a notice that informs a person that if you experience certain behavior, you are going to take action accordingly. Boundaries sound like, hey, if you speak to me in a disrespectful manner, we're going to have to end the conversation and I'm going to remove myself from the room. You see how there's no request there? You see how like the onus isn't on the other person. It's more of you informing them of what's going to take place if they continue to behave in a manner that's not healthy or to your liking. Boundaries are amazing. Boundaries make the world go round. And you should exercise them. You should establish them. You should uphold them. You should maintain them because they protect you. And here's the thing. A lot of people think that boundaries are a way of, like boundaries negatively impact a relationship or a boundary is like a punishment. Listen, in my opinion, a boundary is a way to ensure that we have a healthy, prosperous relationship. A boundary is a way for me to inform you of how to keep a relationship with me. Like I'm putting this boundary in place so that we can keep and maintain a relationship. It isn't a punishment, or it isn't something that is gonna prevent us from having a relationship. If anything, I'm giving you the blueprint on how to engage me so that we can keep a good, healthy, positive rapport. I think it's important to focus on, focus on self-care, focus on self-love. And to be honest, this is something that I only learned, for me, I learned as a man in my 30s, learning about, some of y'all probably was like, I didn't know you was that. But yeah, I didn't learn about self-love and self-care. I'm not going to say self-love but I didn't really learn about how to put self-care in practice, how to prioritize myself until, honestly, I was in my 30s. And like anything else, it takes time and it takes practice in order to build a routine and a rhythm. And I'm much better at it now than I was when I first got started. But, it's a work in progress. Keep you a support system. Keep people around you that love you, that care about you. Keep people who, they love and respect you, but they're not impressed by you. You know what I'm saying? They're not yes men. They're not, they're not just going to tell you what you want to hear. You want people that understand the fullness of who you are. They see your potential and they speak to your highest possibility. And so they know what your potential is, what you're capable of, and they're going to call you to live in that, to walk in that. You want people like that around you, right? You want people who are going to uplift you, who are going to pour into you, who, are going to support you. Family, friends. You want to have a tribe who has your best interests at heart. Then the last thing I would say is, invest in therapy. Invest in your mental health and your well-being, because everything starts with mindset. Everything starts with your mental. Therapy is a great way for you to discover limiting beliefs that you need to remove, narratives, invisible scripts that you have running on autopilot in your life that are producing results that may or may not be in alignment with what feels good to you, with what supports you, with what makes you feel healthy and whole. It may illuminate behaviors, habits, language that you use, that you've adopted, that's been given to you, that isn't in alignment with where you currently are in your life. And if, to this point you struggled with identifying toxic relationships, or you've struggled with figuring out what to do with toxic relationships, maybe you don't know it's toxic. Therapy can help you identify it. Maybe you know that it's toxic, but you don't know how to manage it or remove it. Therapy will give you tools. Therapy will give you the emotional literacy, give you the tools, give you, the language to navigate these situations. And then I think it's just a great way for you to discover and learn more about yourself, to confront yourself, and to ideate about what's possible with who you are or what life gets to look like because you said so. Again, therapy is something that I've had experience with as a child, but I've opted back into as an adult going through, my divorce process. And, my therapist is nothing short of amazing. Literally, in many regards, saved my life. And I don't say that lightly. I don't know. It's like having a Doctor Strange like Doctor Strange like surgeon, but just for your mind, for your mental. World class insights, and I'm grateful for my therapist. Shout out to my therapist. You know who you are. Thank you. I'm a little stingy with my therapist. I ain't gonna hold you, so I'm not saying no names. But if you need recommendations, I could definitely make a recommendation for you. But yeah, I think if you're struggling to navigate healthy relationships, if you know you have a toxic relationships, you have a responsibility to yourself to remove those things from your environment, from your being, so that you could lead a healthy, whole life, so that you have a chance at, unlocking your potential. You have a chance at, living and experiencing, realizing your highest possibility. Toxic relationships will steal every bit of joy, every bit of thunder out of your life if you let it. But if you're willing to put in some work, to be honest with you, it doesn't even have to feel good, and it won't feel good at first. But I think, like anything, over time you get more familiar and you learn to feel good about taking care of yourself, standing up for yourself. And you don't have to know what it looks like. You don't have to have experience with it. Most of us don't. Again, most of us get blindsided by a toxic relationship because we never knew how to have healthy relationships. Right? Awareness breeds choice. You can't choose something that you're not aware of. And most of us are not aware that we accept negative things. We accept things that aren't good for us. Many of us don't realize, we aren't aware that we have toxic tendencies, habits, behavior because it's normal in our environment. Many of us don't know or aren't aware of the fact that we're in it. And once we become aware, we don't know what to do with it because we don't have the tools or the training. And then sometimes people are just ashamed to admit that this is something that they're experiencing, something that they're dealing with. And the reality is we all deal with it in some way, shape, or form. And so this is just, my way of starting a conversation, sharing tools, exchanging experience and ideas so that we can, together as a community, be healthy, be whole, be fully expressed, have peace. Somebody is watching this right now, and you know what you need to do. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the people that you're responsible to. You owe it to the people coming behind you. You probably got children, a son, a daughter. You got a mother, you got a partner, you got somebody that loves you and cares about you, somebody that's dependent on you. Remove that relationship before it's too late, before it contaminates your spirit any more than it already has. Think about the opportunity cost. For every moment, every second, minute, hour, day, week, month that goes by, that you allow this thing to remain connected to you, it's taxing you, it's draining you, it's taking away life from you that you can't ever get back. Life that you can use to invest in your wildest dream. Think about the opportunity cost. And I can assure you it's not worth it. It might be a tough thing to do. It might be a really difficult decision. But I promise you it's worth it in the long run. Get the help you need if you need it. But make it happen.